job, guys being furloughed, or really just figuring out, as Jim said, how do you buy and sell and do real estate in a time that nobody has ever experienced and hopefully will never experience again. So I wanted to start with kind of going back to what I was initially going to speak about, which is my journey and how I got to this point. So I went to college. I have a bachelor's degree in human resource management, and I did what I think most people do after college. After high school, you go to college, you get this corporate job that is largely it was a great experience. But shortly after I finished college, I started working this full-time job, and I felt like I could be doing more. And so my first deal that I ever did, I tell a lot of people that my first deal was buying a condo in Canal Winchester and flipping it. But really, my first deal was a house hack. And so right out of college, I purchased a 4-bedroom home in Canal Winchester, and I rented out the other 3 bedrooms to my college roommates. And so I really root that as my first real estate deal. And I'll talk a little bit more about how I scaled and such. But the overall story here is I spent just short of 10 years in the corporate world. And I most recently, before I quit my job, was a regional HR manager for DSW, the shoe company. So I spent 10 years in a progressive HR role throughout multiple different companies. And April 12th of 2019, so just over a year ago at this point, I did what I think a lot of people aspire to do, and really why we all, if you're working a full-time job, really what we all have in the back of our minds is this financial freedom, right? This ability to do what we want to do when we want to do it and not have to work for the man or whatever it is. And I just hit just past my 1-year anniversary, and it happened right in the middle of this COVID stuff going on. So a lot has changed in a year, but really a lot has changed in the last 60 days. And so I'll talk a little bit about how I started. So as I mentioned, I purchased my first home. It was 3.5% down FHA. At the time, it was 2010, maybe very early 2011. Pricing and such was very different in Columbus than it is now. But what I did was I house hacked, and I took that money. I was working a corporate job, as I said, and I took that money that I was making for my roommates and I saved it up. And I saved it for really just a few months. It really wasn't that long. I pulled some credit line money from one of the credit cards that I had, and I purchased one single condo in Canal Winchester, and I bought it for $25,000. I put I think it was $5,500 into it, maybe a little more. I did a lot of the work myself. By trade, I was always a car guy growing up, so I used to be able to build an engine and that kind of stuff. I probably lost that skill set, but I dove right in to trying to do my own floors. I painted the house. I did all the baseboard. I went bought a miter saw, and so I flipped this house and I sold it for $56,000 after 3 days on the market. So I now what I have, and what I think a lot of people struggle with in the beginning, is the analysis paralysis and getting that first deal done. So here I am. I'm 21 years old at the time, and I have successfully flipped my first house. And so my proof of concept is done. I've showed my parents I can do it, and they thought I was crazy. And I took that and I bought the condo 3 doors down. So what better to do than buy in the same area? And I flipped that one for a similar profit. And then I started to get into houses. So by about the middle of age 21, I had flipped 3 houses, and I was sitting on a fairly large amount of cash for a 21-year-old, and I panicked. And so what I did was I bought 3 rental properties, all of which I still own today. So I bought a duplex in the Hilltop, and then I bought 2 houses in South Linden. So C minus areas depending on the street. And what I did was I started the BRRRR strategy without even knowing it. This was before Bigger Pockets. I started to follow the BRRRR strategy. So for the last 8.5, 9 years, I have been BRRRRing my way to financial freedom. And I think there's a lot of things that I didn't expect about walking away from my job, and I'll talk about a lot of those. But what I did was the model of buying a house, rehabbing it, getting it rented, refinancing it, and then doing it all over again. And I think a lot about what could I have done if I didn't work 10 years in a corporate job? What could I have, how could I have scaled? But I also go back to the reason I was able to do a BRRRR is my loan ability was very strong. Traditional banks would look at a guy like me. I had a strong W-2. I had a track record of good credit, good income, and good projects. And so a traditional bank, Chase Bank, I have a mortgage through Chase, which is one of my properties through Chase, which is crazy nowadays in my mind, because they would laugh at me if I walked into a Chase Bank. But I think I think a lot about like what could I have done if I didn't stay so long in this corporate job. But I also go back and I chalk it up to it allowed me to do a lot of what I ended up doing. So I want to turn the attention a little bit to like what was day one like. So I quit my job. I put a 1 month notice in, and my last day was on a Friday. And for 9 years, every single Monday through Friday, I woke up at the same time, pretty much the same time. I ate almost the same breakfast. I drove almost the same route. And then all of a sudden, I wake up on the following Monday and nothing was I didn't have to be anywhere. It was a really weird feeling. I'll never forget that feeling. I woke up and I thought, shit, now what? Like there's no one to tell me what to do anymore. There's no meeting that I have to attend at 9 o'clock to do a Monday morning check-in. I mean, there's just, it's a very weird feeling to wake up and really have nothing to do. No one telling you have to do something. And so I felt like on that Monday I had arrived. I spent the last 9.5 years at that point building this dream of what I wanted life to be, which was that waking up. And I don't think I did anything until like 11 o'clock that day. And it felt really good. And, I've had vacation days and stuff where I just did nothing, but this was a weird feeling that for whatever reason, I was free. So I had reached what, in my mind, financial freedom. Now, that comes with a major asterisk. So for anybody who has done what I've done and quit my job, it is not as glamorous as people think. So I see Brian Urbanski laughing. He knows exactly what I'm talking about because it's a whole different world. So I wrote down some differences. Like what was my life like as, being in the rat race and being an investor on the side. So for years, I worked 8 to 5. I traveled a lot for my last job, but I would work on my rentals. At that point, I think I owned 14 or 15 rentals last year. And I would manage my rentals. I would manage my rehabs. I would do all that other stuff after work. So from almost probably 6 to 10 every night, I would come home. I would, just answer tenants. I would screen tenants for vacancies. I would do all the stuff that I do now after work. And now, I wake up in the morning and 8 hours or 9 hours a day that I used to spend in a corporate job is just completely open. And so I thought, how am I going to fill my time? And some higher power must have heard that because boy, has it filled plus some more. So one of the things I noticed right away was how much time I had at my computer when I worked a full-time job. And I could sit there and at downtime, because I think anybody who works a corporate job knows you're never really busy from 8 to 5, 100%. And so I was able to, I'm at my computer. I can open up my property management software, whatever it was, and I can use a lot of my computer time and such to help manage my rental business. At this point, because I make my own schedule, I had to actually make time to do that. And so it just goes back to the lack of structure that I had when I first started. And it was very weird for me. So if anybody's considering making this change, I think it's important to do a drive run in your mind, maybe take a week of vacation, whatever it is, and build a schedule. Like, think about, okay, everybody has a pie of time. I've said this on a couple of other speaking engagements. Everybody has a pie of time. We all have 24 hours in a day. And for the most part, 6 to 8 hours are taken up by sleeping, another 3 or 4 hours are miscellaneous. So for the most part, we all have half a day to do everything that we have to do in a day. And you have to be very conscious when you're out on your own, and you have to be conscious of what you do at that time, how you fill your time. So it was something I struggled with when I first started. Was I almost felt like I had too much time because I was so used to working 16 to 18 hour days. And now all of a sudden it's down to like a normal standard work day. So if anybody's considering making this move, I always think about, do a dry run, try to understand what your day will look like. And if you even have enough work to keep you busy, that has not been a problem for me. So one of the things that I mentioned it a little bit earlier, one of the big challenges I've had in being a full-time real estate investor is my loan ability. And so I was fat and happy with working with traditional banks. I bring them my rent roll, I bring them my schedule of real estate, my W-2, and say, hey, I need a loan. And I had never in my life been turned down for a loan. So a couple of months went by, and I had a major development project come up, and it came across my desk. I actually don't have a desk; I have a coffee table, but it came across the old coffee table, and I wanted it. And it was a really funky deal. And I knew at that point that no bank. I tried to go to a bank, and I said, "Hey, I really want to do this deal." And they said, "Okay, well, what's your income? Blah blah blah." Well, my income was down to, it was more than cut in half, because as real estate investors, we consistently knock down our income from what we really make down to what we want to pay taxes on. And so on paper, I was broke basically. Once you took out my W-2 that was no longer there, a bank looked at me and they were like, I don't even know how you're buying groceries. Well, again, they're looking at my taxes only. And so this entered the next phase of my real estate investing, which is hard and private money. And so there are, again, I never experienced this before. And it's funny, the last in-person, sorry, Jim and Cream team or Coin team, but the last in-person coin meeting that I attended was when Casey Marks from Fund That Flip, formerly with Fund That Flip, spoke. It was my introduction to hard money. And so I want to thank, hard money. First of all, I know we've seen some changes. I'll talk about that with the COVID situation, but hard money, private money is what has kept my business moving in the last 13 months. And so that was the time that Casey spoke, and he got up there and just said, "Hey, this is the stuff that we can do. Here's how we're different. We don't care about your W-2. We care about your experience." And so the reason I talk about this is, if anybody's familiar with Tim Bratz up in Cleveland, I think he owns about 2,500 units, maybe more. I mean, it changes all the time. But I think I went to a Tim Bratz training about a month after I quit my job. And he said something there that always has stuck with me. So if you take anything from this conversation at all, take this. And that's all, I really butchered that. It is half the juice of a watermelon is still a lot more than all the juice of a grape. I thought, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay. But the reason I say this is, previously I would have looked at a 12% hard money and thought, how would I ever make money on this? How would I, I'm paying 12%, 14%, whatever it is for private money, hard money. And I would think like, that's ridiculous. I'm used to paying 4 or 5% through a traditional bank. And when Tim said that back in May of last year, so it's been about a year since I sat in his conference, I started thinking a lot about that shortly after the conference, just thinking, even if I make 85% of the deal now instead of the 95%, it's better than zero, because right now, no bank will touch me. So I have no choice but to check out hard money, private money, and start to get creative. And I think that's what the last year, there's a number of words I can pin to and what it's like to be a full-time real estate investor. But One that sticks in my mind is creative. And that is whether it's the deal structure, the financing, who does the work. I mean, I've got a guy that's got a guy for everything. And so I've had to get really creative this last year in keeping my business moving forward so that it didn't totally faceplant when banks locked up. So at least for me, banks locked up for me, not for everybody. And so I think, those are some things that I took away from that coin meeting was I've got to give this a shot. And so I closed this deal in mid-May of last year, May 15th, I believe. And I am still working on the deal. So over a year later, geez, it kind of sucks to say out loud, I am still working on this major development deal. It is 75% done. So 2 of the houses are fully sold. 1 of the houses is in contract, and I am building the 4th one right now. And that goes back to creative. I had never really done anything like creative when it came to real estate. I had just done my BRRRR deals, buy a house on the west side of Columbus for 60, remodel it, refinance it out at a 125 ARV, and just do it all over again. And so what this last year has done for me is it's allowed me to get creative with how I do things. And it's a very weird feeling when you're used to a paycheck hitting every other Friday. And then once your last check hits and there's no more, it's pretty wild. So I think I've had to just get creative. I had to get scrappy on how I keep deals coming, how I keep them funded, and how I manage them. And so, I could talk, guys, for hours and hours about the last year, but I'm trying to hit the highlights here of some of the hindsights and stuff that I've had. One of the biggest learnings that I had when I quit was, even when I had that extra time to sit there and do the computer work and all this other stuff, I didn't have any systems in place. So for those of you who are newer in your business, for the love of God, please take the time now to set up the proper systems so that as you scale, you are not playing catch up. And honestly, I would say the last 6 months I've been playing catch up. So when I quit my job, I had 14 rental properties. A year later, I'm at 31 with 2 more in contract, and my business partner and I are targeting a 36 unit. So I'm really looking at scalability, and I've more than doubled in size in the last year. So if you think about 14 rentals after 8 years, 17 rentals after the last 13 months, it's been awesome. And I would say a lot of that does go back to getting creative, being okay with taking on expensive money. I'm not telling you to go out and pay 25%, but fund that flip right now. I know they're still doing deals. I think they're at 14% or something like that. I don't even know for sure, but these guys, the money has gotten more expensive, but it's still there. And so I do see a question about my preferred property management software. So what I use with 31 units is I use Cozy, and Cozy is free. And so one of the things I have written down here about COVID is keeping overhead low. And most investors in Columbus, myself included, aren't large enough for some of these major like portfolio management systems. So I have used Buildium. Buildium is fantastic. But even with 31 rentals, it almost just felt like too much. And it was like $100 a month. To me, that's a dinner out with my wife. I don't know. So I use Cozy, and it's just the one that I found that it does what I need it to do with 31 rentals. But it isn't, it's not Buildium. It's not Appfolio. I know a lot of folks use that. And so I would say, take a look at what works best for your business. At some point, I know I will outgrow Cozy. But the good thing is so when I left my job and with 14 rentals, I had no PM software. My PM software was my email and my phone, people texting me maintenance requests. And so it was a huge learning curve for my tenants when they would text me and say, hey, my sink is backed up. The first thing I'd say is, hey, please submit the maintenance request through Cozy so that I can track it. I can track my KPIs, make sure I'm getting to these things in time, making sure I'm closing out maintenance orders. I am still to this day a one-man show. So I don't have an assistant. I don't have a property manager. I do it all myself. And so there's goods and there's good and bad to that. The good thing is when COVID hit, I didn't have to eliminate anybody. It's just me, and I can't eliminate myself. And so my whole goal the last 60 days is to reduce overhead. I was just in the process of looking at doing a VA. And to me, it was like, you know what, I'll just kind of ride this wave a little bit longer. I'll do it myself. And when we have a little bit more clarity on COVID, I can make the decision on whether or not I want to bring on a VA or maybe just an A. I don't know if that's a real thing, but an assistant. So it's definitely something that's on my radar. But the one thing I still pay for is I did bring on a bookkeeper. So I'm very diverse. So a lot of you guys know me as a landlord or a flipper. But I'm a developer. So I'm building houses in Columbus. I am a flipper, of course. So I flip houses still. I'm a landlord, 31 rentals. I am a realtor. And so this last year, I have really ramped up being a real estate agent. And I think it's important during COVID to be diverse. And I want to highlight a business that I think does really, really well on being diverse. And that is Nick and Sarah with the Nesters. I know they're coin favorites and really they're Columbus favorites. And I was talking to Nick a little bit last night and I said, do you mind if I call you guys out basically? Because as a lot of you know, Nick and Sarah, a good portion of their eggs are in the Airbnb short-term rental basket, but they are not a one-trick pony or what, I don't know what the technical word is, but they are a very diverse business. And I think tying this into COVID, it is now more than ever, it's become apparent that you can't just do one thing. So Nick and Sarah, short-term rentals, okay, bottom falls out. What do? We have bills to pay. We have commitments to people. So what they've done is, in my mind, masterful. Where Nick is an architect, so he helps other investors design their layouts. He can draw them up. Sarah is she's a stager, a designer, and so they're both so well versed. So yeah, were they impacted by COVID and the short-term rentals? Absolutely, but they didn't totally collapse like some other Airbnb folks have unfortunately done, or even landlords that only rely on rental properties. Tenants stop paying. Now what? So for me, one of the things that I spent the last year doing is becoming more than just a landlord and really being multiple arms of real estate, not knowing that a global pandemic would hit, but knowing that times change, and we were all riding really high in February, middle of March, everybody's riding high. Private money is flowing, hard money is flowing, and then all of a sudden, the bottom essentially falls out of all of that stuff. And so those who will not only survive but succeed in this time, I think, are those that are diverse. And that doesn't mean that you own multiple businesses, but again, all my eggs are in the real estate basket, but they're spread out a little bit to where, I don't touch the stock market. It's just not my thing. I transferred like 10 grand over to E-Trade a month ago and it's still sitting there. I was too afraid to spend it. And so I don't like assets that I can't control. And, I always have people say, well, you can't control your tenants. You're right. But I can control the situation a hell of a lot more than some dinger on the NASDAQ that is going up or down. I mean, I don't know when that thing is good or bad. So me personally, I'm diverse, but I'm all in real estate. And so I would encourage, once again, find what works best for you. I have my plumber dabbled into the stock market and made an absolute killing. Heck yeah, good for him. It's just not my game. So I get a lot of questions about that. Believe it or not, I have a lot of people ask me, is all I do real estate? And the answer to that is yes, but there are so many different arms of real estate. I don't wholesale. I accidentally wholesaled a property one time and accidentally made $2,000 and was like, oh my God, what do I do? And so I'm not a wholesaler. I rely on wholesalers to bring me deals and then I can take it from there. So one of my suggestions is just to be diverse. I think it's important to be more than just a landlord or anything else. So one other thing I want to make sure that I highlight is, especially during COVID, we are all analyzing risk more than ever. And so, I mean, banks, I'm refinancing too. By the way, I'm loanable now. Woohoo. I have a year of real estate under my belt, 2019. Knock on wood, was a great year. And so now I'm able to show a bank, hey, I'm not totally crazy. I actually had a great year, and here are my my taxes, and so now I'm loanable. So I am refinancing two rental properties. Um, as we speak. It is taking absolutely forever. So I'm sorry to my private lender who is actually on the call right now. And so I'm sorry it's taking so long. I'm trying, but I think one of the things I just want to make sure I totally hammer home, because it's been a huge game changer for me, is the value of a partnership. And so up to the point of quitting my job, um, sounds kind of jerky, but I never felt like I needed anybody else. I mean, I was doing all right. I had 14 rentals. I had good income. I mean, whatever. I'm riding high. All of a sudden, things change, and things change in a way that, in a good way that I fully expected. Freedom, the ability to just put every bit of energy that I have into real estate. That's exactly what I expected, and it's been amazing. But the lack of loanability, it's kind of a lonely job too. When you're a real estate investor, uh, and you don't have any employees or anything, it's lonely. And so I took a leap in November of 19, and I took on a partner. So I still have my core business, which is Clarizio Properties, which houses all of my rental properties. But then I started Clarizio Holdings, which is my partnership. And I 13 of my 31 units were acquired with a partner. And I think going back to just risk and how I can tie that into COVID, banks are stressing properties more than ever. And so the 75% LTV, it may have dropped to 70, or the 30-year amortization that I was getting, it dropped to 20, believe it or not. I actually had the bank drop me midway through the refinance process in the last couple of weeks down to a 20-year amortization to underwrite my deal. And so what that means is it's less cash flow. And so it's things have changed. And the biggest value to a partnership, there's two values to the partnership in my mind. One, my partner, Brad Parton, I don't know if he's on here or not. I can't see. Um, he is good at everything I'm not. And so, he just said, I'm here, man. Hey, Brad. Um, but Brad is good at everything I'm not good at, which is accounting. I have been paying for QuickBooks. I'm not kidding. I've been paying for QuickBooks for 6 years. I don't even know what my login information is. I have no idea. So I have a bookkeeper, but I can barely spell QuickBooks, put it that way. I don't know how to input a bank account. I don't know any of it. Brad is a wizard at QuickBooks. And so he brings something to the table that I don't, and that's organization and accounting. Those have always been my weaknesses. I'm an executor by nature, so I can manage the hell out of a project. I can get people motivated. I can hold them accountable. I'm a huge, that's like, I think my number one trait is accountability. I have high expectations for people. I have high expectations for myself. And when those people don't meet that, I make sure that I hold them accountable accordingly. And it doesn't mean firing them or anything like that. It just means calling it out. I've worked with investors. I also manage projects for other investors in some rare cases, but I took over a project from an investor one time who basically felt like, he had no choice but to just listen to what his contractor was saying. And, well, this guy's I've already paid him some of the job. You know what? Don't ever feel like you aren't the one that's in control. And so, how you manage your business is a direct reflection of you. And I think the people who work for me, I have pretty much the same crews going on about 3 years now. I run two full-time crews. They're all 1099. So again, going back to no employees, low overhead. I have been able to keep all of them busy with projects. But how you run your business with the people who you work with is a direct reflection of you. I, with all humility, I believe I'm a very accountable person. And I think the contractors that I work with, the contractors that I've chose to have the privilege to work for me, and me have the privilege to work with them, I believe to me, it's a two-way street. We are both privileged to work with each other. So just remember that. And so I try to keep accountability at the front of mind. And so, the second thing, Brad is good at many things. He's good at finding deals. Again, I've said I'm not a wholesaler. I don't like calling people. I expect the deal to come across my coffee table. And so Brad is the one that goes out there and finds these deals. And he's good at raising money. And that's something I'm decent at. So we share a mutual thing there. But he is good at raising money, probably better than me. And then on his end, God love him, he has probably, Brad, correct me if I'm wrong, never swung a hammer. And, I've done a lot of the work myself. I could probably remodel about an entire house myself. I'm not great at HVAC, electrical, and plumbing, but, I can remodel a whole house pretty well. And so from an execution standpoint, an operator standpoint, that's what I do. So I run our construction. And so the reason I say all this isn't to have, jokes or anything like that, but it's to talk about partnerships, because I know a lot of people start with a partnership. I think about some of the biggest investors in Columbus that started with a partner, and some of the biggest didn't. And they've done kind of what I've done, which is recognize a weakness. And for me, once I was vulnerable, I'm sitting there, no job really. I realized I've got to do something to continue to grow at the speed that I want to grow. And that for me was bringing on a partner. And, we own the 13 units together. We're doing a couple flips together, and it's working out really well. But the second thing that from a partnership perspective is it's reduced risk. So from a bank perspective, you now have two people that are guaranteeing this loan. You have, an entity that has two backers, two guarantors that are backing the loan. And at a time right now with COVID, I think banks and really private lenders, hard money lenders, everybody is getting more and more, or they're getting less and less risky. And so I think a partnership, what that does is it shows the bank, so long as you both bring something to the table, is it shows a private money lender, it shows the folks that we rely on for our business that there's two people in this ball game. And in my mind, it reduces my risk by half. And so, the debt that I take on to do these projects, I'm accountable for all of it, but so is Brad. And so it's a 50-50 deal. We have a question here. It looks like Brad might have answered it, but from Brian, is your partnership structure an LLC, a corporation, or a true partner? So it is an LLC, Brian. It's a 50-50 partnership through an LLC. We have legal agreements. And then that partnership flows into my corporation and pays me essentially a salary, pays Brad a salary. And so, we're only really 6 months into it. So we're still kind of trying to figure it out. But I will say I have seen leaps and bounds in growth, not only just from the number of units, but also just personally, professionally, from having somebody to hold me accountable every day that I used to have for 10 years working in a corporation. I had a boss that did a performance review, and while neither Brad or I are the boss, we do Sunday night check-ins. So, hey, what are we going to do Sunday night? What are we doing this week? And Brad is somebody who can hold me accountable, and vice versa. So, just real quick, I want to pause. Any questions? I see some stuff coming through this chat thing, but would also like anybody else, feel free to speak up. Any questions?
Brad, you mentioned systems and that they helped you scale it. Was that just the property management software, or have you put other systems in place that have helped you in the past year?
Yeah, that's a good question, Jim. So, look, I don't have SOPs and stuff like a lot of people probably have. I still, I don't run it like a hobby anymore. And that was a huge lesson when I quit my job was, okay, real estate largely for 8 to 9 years was a hobby. It was what gave me the extra income to do whatever I want. Well, now it's my business. And so, Jim, to answer your question directly, I did not have a PM software. So I did implement Cozy. The change curve on that was pretty straightforward. I think tenants were looking for something. I think I'm probably at the size where I need to have formal PM software. So one was Cozy. Two was hiring a bookkeeper. So while I had QuickBooks, basically I paid Nate Bush every year and his team to just I just walk in around the October, November, and just say help. And they would have to reconcile all my books. And it was just, it was just a crap show. And so making sure that I'm proactive on my books rather than reactive. We reconcile quarterly, and I'm paying quarterly taxes, all that stuff. The next thing is I have a defined tenant placing system. So I use TransUnion Smart Move for my background check. It runs credit, background, rental, if anybody were to have an eviction, so rental verification, and it does this like kind of squirrely income verification. I do not use that, but I come from 10 years in HR where I've been in multiple lawsuits to defend the company, and I understand the importance of documentation. And I did this because of this. And so for me, I didn't always do that with my rentals. It was like, well, this person, whatever, I'll just fill it with this person. Well, now I have kind of a formal system to screen tenants. So I put TransUnion in place, and I'm strict with it. If somebody says, well, I don't feel comfortable putting my credit card information in online, I'm sorry. I mean, that's the process that I follow. It allows the tenants to pay directly for the background check and all that stuff. So I don't collect any personal information outside of the application before they're actually a tenant. And then, I still use Excel for a lot of my modeling. So like my financial modeling. And so understanding what's my income looking like, how I'm trending. I track a lot of my, I track some expenses on Excel. Obviously I use QuickBook, but I track some of the bigger expenses. I'm trying to think, I know I have one more system. Darn it. I can't think of what it is. But I mean, I just think it goes back to the root cause of, or not necessarily the root cause, but viewing all this stuff viewing real estate as a hobby versus my job. And I think a lot of investors, even on this call, who have a full-time job and are doing kind of what I did, you probably view real estate as your out, and it is. But make sure that you treat it as your business even while you're employed, so that you build the behaviors that basically I was kind of left with when I quit the job. I'm just like, oh, here I am. I'll never forget that first Monday morning, and it's now what? So having that plan, having not just the pie in the sky, I want to be out, but I want to be out, and here's what I plan on doing. And that took me about a month to really start to get back in the swing. And, for 9 years, same routine, same everything. And it was really just kind of a slap in the face as far as I don't have anybody telling me what to do anymore. I got to figure this out. Otherwise, I'm not getting paid. So I had a question that says, any Section 8 or are all of your units open market? So I am by no means against Section 8. I think it's a wonderful tool if you own in a Section 8 area, which I think we all kind of know generally where Section 8 is, but Section 8 can be anywhere. I do not own any Section 8 properties. However, as a realtor, I have sold properties to folks that are Section 8 occupied. I have sold them to where they've been remodeled, and they have done the Section 8 thing. It is something that on one of my properties I'm considering. It is grossly under rented. If you guys remember, I said I purchased a duplex in the Hilltop as one of my first 3 properties. That's a prime area in my mind. It's a 3-bedroom, and basically Section 8 pays on the number of bedrooms. They don't really give more if you do granite countertops versus laminate, but they do if it's a 2-bedroom versus a 3-bedroom. So I have nothing against Section 8. I have just been lucky enough that the open market is fairly strong in my mind. And if you put out a quality product, I don't know if you need Section 8, but I'll tell you, there's a lot of landlords right now that are happy as hell they have Section 8 because that keeps paying. I am happy to say I went 31 of 31, or Brad and I combined went 31 of 31 in March and April. I'm sorry, April and May. And so who knows how long that will last. And so there is a big push for a lot of people to get, whether it's Section 8 or there's a number of voucher programs. I would highly encourage those. Of course, there's downsides to it as well. And, if you want to chat offline, Tom, I'm happy to kind of go through some of those downsides. But a lot of people right now are like, man, I really wish that I had Section 8 because those guys keep paying. And in some of those lower income areas, the ones that were mainly impacted by the service industry and the highest unemployment areas, it'd be nice to have Section 8 right now, but I've gotten lucky. So yeah. And then I had another question. Well, it's Brad. Thanks for lobbing that out for me. Do you consider your lenders, title companies, attorneys an extension of your team? Man, hell yeah. I'll tell you what. Lenders have been a little funky in the last couple months and really the last year. I mean, I went from being unloanable because of my income to unloanable because of a global pandemic, or tougher to get loans. But my title company, I use the same title company for pretty much everything, unless I'm a buyer. Seller picks title. There are multiple deals I can think of that wouldn't have closed if it wasn't for my title company. And I have two different attorneys I work with. I work with a landlord-specific attorney, so somebody to handle my evictions. By the way, fun fact, you cannot do your own eviction if the property is in an LLC. And so you should go out and find I don't want to say a cheap attorney, but one that doesn't value an eviction at $2,000. So I have an eviction attorney, and he also does just like some lease law, that kind of thing. I run some, if I'm updating my lease, adding a clause or anything like that, I run it by him, and it's like $100 or something. But let me tell you, a lawsuit is a heck of a lot more expensive. And then I have an actual contract attorney. And what she does is, like, for example, when Brad and I started our partnership, you should really prepare for a partnership like you're planning for a divorce at some point. And it sucks to say that, but most partnerships at some point fall apart. And so you have to go into a partnership with the idea in the back of your mind. This probably won't last forever. Maybe it will, but if it doesn't, then what? And so it was important for me to spend some of that money up front. Brad and I both, because Brad has his own rental kind of business. And, he buys differently. He buys in different areas. And so I definitely consider, Brad, to answer your question, I do consider those non-contractors as part of my team. So lenders, I think I work with the same hard money lender. I still work with Fund That Flip. They are still doing deals. And I work with the same title company and largely the same attorneys every time. And they're definitely part of your team. But don't be afraid to try new ones. I mean, this lender I'm refinancing deals with, I've never used them before. And I go where, I don't jump from company to company. I do have a lot of relationships, and relationships, this business is so driven by relationships. But my last bank wasn't able to do it. What am I going to do? Say, oh, well, that sucks. I'll just wait until you're able to do it. No, I mean, I have to survive, so to speak. So it's all about adaptability as well. Yeah. All right. We've got a chat question. Having been in this for a year now, what are your goals for the next few years? Where are you planning to? That's a good question. Jeez. So my wife and I, we had a baby in January. She had the baby. I was just there for it. And so life has changed a little bit for me, a lot for me, really. And my focus is sharper than ever, but it's different. If I think about, my daughter was born January 28th. If I think about what I wanted in life on January 27th, God, was it a lot different than on January 28th. And I think anybody here who has a child or whatever, I mean, hell, a dog you love, I mean, it doesn't matter. My focus it's sharp, but it's for a different reason. And I always feel like everything I did up until the age of 29 was, it's for myself, for my wife, for my family, my parents, whatever, all the cheesy stuff we all say. But man, life has a new meaning when you are directly responsible for a child. And my wife and I have been talking a lot recently about whether or not she's going to go back to work. She's a teacher, and so she went back to work, but it was online. And that's been the silver lining in all this, is that she never really went back to work technically. And so my goal for the next 12 months is to replace her income. And it's a monumental task, because it's not just the income, it's the income plus the benefits. And so that's the other thing, guys. Have a plan in place for benefits. I was married. I'm good. But insurance is extremely expensive. We've been pricing it out. Good God. I'll have to buy a few more houses just to pay for the insurance. So again, to answer the question directly, my goal over the next year is to replace my wife's income. And anybody who's ever read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I keep thinking about it. And again, I mentioned earlier, I'm a car guy. And so I remember reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I think it's like all of our first book. And he said, well, I want a new Porsche. I'd love a new Porsche. Heck, I'd love any Porsche. And so he said, I go out and I buy enough real estate or some sort of cash flowing asset to pay for that Porsche. So I didn't take on a liability necessary. I just took that asset that pays me and I feed that money into a different spot. And so that has been, my wife quitting her job, providing for my daughter, has become my Porsche. And so that is really what I've been looking at doing, is just how do I raise a family without having any kind of quality of life change. Real estate has allowed me to live a very good life. And as much as I could, probably change some things, maybe take less vacations. Hell, I don't know what it is. I want to be able to live the same quality of life while my wife stays at home. And whatever that means from a financial perspective, I just have to replace it. So I am continuing, and I've got a note written down here about how I've shifted pretty drastically with COVID, and I'm going straight back to my roots. And this is Brad Clarizio's perspective of what's going on right now as a realtor, as an investor, as a dad, whatever it is, a fellow, person here in Columbus, Ohio. I'm going back to my roots, which is single family homes that have an all-in of about 100 or less, refining out at 130 to 150. So basically, I'm going back to my roots. This development project that I'm doing, I'll be the first to say I'm going to do very well on it. If this was May 15th of last year, if COVID had hit last year and we were in the middle of the pandemic when this development came across the old coffee table, I wouldn't have done it. It's that simple. And it's not because I'm afraid. It's because the risk just isn't worth the reward in my mind. And so I think what I'm doing is I'm going back to just like what got me to success. And that's okay for 3 to 6 months, or hell, however long this takes. It could be longer. But what I don't want to do is I don't want to be stuck with a brand new project or something like that I can't handle in the midst of, what has happened. And so I had to make a difficult choice just a couple of weeks ago. I had this prime piece of land in Old Town East, and I had plans and everything drawn up to build from the ground up a 20-unit building. And it was a $1.7 million project. Awesome. I mean, it's what everybody dreams of, right? I mean, you build your own place. Heck yeah. How can you go wrong with that? But what happened at this point was my private lender called me. He said, hey, listen, I lost my job. I was laid off today. This was middle of April. I was laid off today. I need my money. And I said, well, it doesn't really work that way. I mean, it's tied up into a real estate deal, and I have to do something. And he's like, listen, I need my money in 5 days. And I'm like, hey, I'll do everything I can. I ended up doing it in about 12 days, but I had to sell the land, and it sucked because I had these huge plans. That was my retirement plan, was this land. And so this whole COVID stuff has it's forced some tough decisions, but I think it was right for my business. I don't know how in tune banks or how banks will feel about doing a $2 million ground up development in the middle of all the stuff going on. And so I made the decision to sell the land. So it's a tough decision I had to make. But what it did is it brought me back to my core. It brought me back to who Brad Clarizio is, Clarizio Properties, and what has gotten me to where I am today. And so always have your core, but don't be afraid to take risks. It's my cat. Sorry. And so this 90-day period that we're in right now, hopefully it's only 90 days, things are opening back up. I think we're going to be fine. I think Columbus is one of probably 8 to 10 markets that will, see an impact, but certainly not some of the major financial impacts that something like, but San Francisco will see, because it's a lot of tourism, and Chicago, New York. I mean, these big major metro cities, they're gonna get hit a lot harder than Columbus. Remember, Columbus is the 10th largest metro city in the U.S. It changes. I don't know. It's like 9, 10, 11, whatever it is. Let's just go with 10. But we are probably one of the largest major metro cities that will see the smallest impact. That's my belief. Who knows? Columbus could collapse tomorrow. Let's hope not. But in my mind, I'm approaching things with the same mentality of no risk, no reward, but that risk is stressed a little bit more. So I'm underwriting it a little bit tougher, as if my vacancy could be 10%, and traditionally it's been closer to 3 or 4%. Who knows? But what I don't want to do is I don't want to proceed businesses completely normal and knowing full well that the environment that we're operating in isn't completely normal. And so none of us have the answer to what will happen. If we did, we'd all be making a lot more money than we do. So my mentality here is stick to your roots. There isn't a ton of risk in the Burr strategy outside of not being able to get refinanced. But I'm going back to just where I started. And hopefully that risk minimization is going to pay off. And I know a lot of people are saying, oh, I'm stocking cash to buy things when it collapses. In my mind, we might see a 3 to 5% price drop. But on a $100,000 house, am I going to wait on buying a house over $3,000 to $5,000? No, because I can make that up in the time that everybody else is waiting. I'm making it up. But I'm also not going out and doing a $1.6 million or $1.7 million 20-unit apartment building or this development deal that I'm doing right now. I'm hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars of my own money into it. And I'm over $1 million into this thing in partnership with hard money. And so I would have made a different decision a year ago, but hindsight's 2020. And so I just keep telling myself every morning when I wake up. Yeah. And then where am I planning on taking this? I just turned 30 in January, and I've got this wild idea that at 35, I'm just going to stop doing real estate. And I think everybody thinks of that. They're like, okay, well, I'll just do this till a certain point. And my goal is to get my goal was initially 50 units by the time I was 35. But I'm trending a little more than that right now. I'm trending possibly even 100. I will tell you guys, for those of you who own a portfolio of rentals or do real estate full time, it's exhausting. It's stressful. It's hard on you. And so I've got this wild idea that in 5 years, hopefully be at 100 properties. I'll turn them all over to a quality property manager. Because again, I self-manage right now, and I'll live the life that I always wanted to live. But also keeping in mind that I worked my butt off for the last 10 years, and I have sacrificed a lot. And so in my mind, I did that kind of reverse. A lot of people didn't do a whole lot in college, and they partied and stuff. I never partied in college. It was just my personal choice. I'll tell you, the day I turn 35, I'm having a giant party, and you're all invited. And let's hope it's my retirement party, but it probably won't be, because in 35, I'll say I'll work till 40. And, it's like an NBA player. They want to retire until it's time to do it, and then they keep going. So I don't know exactly where it will take me, but I just plan to keep acquiring properties as smart as I can. And, I say this a lot to the people I work with every day. The only true goal I have in life, well, I have two, to be a good husband, father, all that other stuff. But the goal in my mind, what drives me every day, is I want people to think I'm a good dude. And I say it just like that. I want to be a good dude. And I want people to think, when they think Brad Clarizio, whether they've done a deal with me, they've listened to this, Zoom call, whatever it is, I just want people to think Brad's a good dude. And I've never cut anybody's throat. I've never gone under the table on anybody. But that is like my North Star. Always, I just want to be a good dude. And if that means that I'm done at 31 properties or whatever that means, that's my guiding principle. Just be a good dude or a good gal, whatever you are. We know real estate is full time if it doesn't stop day or night. What advice can you give newer investors with significant others? Uh, Man, I'm not a relationship advice guy, but um, you have to make time for yourself. And that was something I really struggled with from about age 26 to 28. So about 2 to 4 years ago. Um, and I still only had 14 properties. So it's not like I went from, that was the phase that I went from 10 to a million. I mean, it wasn't. It was, just work was like my 100% priority. It was probably the peak of my HR career growth. I had switched jobs. I had went to DSW. I'd taken on a fairly sizable role, especially given what I did on the side with real estate. It was a large role for anybody, and it impacted like my social life, um, and that's something I never want to do again. So now, of course, I'm always on my phone and everything, especially as a realtor. But I have dinner with my wife every night, no matter what. And whether we watch Jeopardy every night, which I got to get off here soon because it starts at 7. I'm just kidding. But we watch Jeopardy every night. We watch Wheel of Fortune. We cook dinner together. And I think whether that's a breakfast with your significant other or calling your mom every Sunday, whatever it is, you have to make time for the other things, the things that seem somehow fall by the wayside in the midst of real estate and money and the drive to be the best. You're not the best, nobody likes you. So that's yeah. Somebody said I'm a good dude. Thanks, appreciate it. What other questions, guys? I'll be honest. I didn't really. It's weird to do the Zoom call. I mean, like I'd rather. It'd be a lot cooler if I was standing in Jim's background talking to everybody. And I wanted to share with you guys um, my success story. And the success here is quitting my job and doing what I think like 95% of people who get started want to do someday. And I did it. And I put this on my Facebook a couple of weeks ago. Watch the video Jump by Steve. Oh gosh, the guy that hosts Family Feud. What the heck's his name? Jim, help me out. Steve Harvey. Steve Harvey. Thank you. Yeah. So watch the video Jump, and it's weird that the the host of Family Feud had an important role in my life. But I remember, I'll never forget, I walked into my boss's office. I had a great relationship with my boss, and I said, "Hey, I do this real estate thing." Nobody really knew exactly what I did, and I love my career. And I always knew someday, this exact conversation I had, I said, I always knew someday that the two would meet a crossroad where I had to choose. And it's either, see my HR career through, where someday I could be the vice president of HR at a big company and make a ton of money and have great benefits, but never really truly be happy, or I can jump. And I'd never seen that video. And I said, hey, this was a Friday. I said, hey, I want to take the weekend to think about it. Can we meet first thing Monday morning and talk about, and he goes, listen, if you come back to my office on Monday morning and tell me that you are not going to quit, I'm going to fire you. And of course, I thought he was kidding. He goes, I'm serious. I'm going to fire you. And he was a huge, role in my life. And he said, I know this is what you want to do, and you're just afraid to do it. He goes, so if you don't make the decision yourself, I'll make it for you. So of course I quit. But he's actually the one that showed me the Jump video. And I think I talked about analysis paralysis earlier on some of the newer investors, just doing your first deal. God, just do your first deal. I don't even care if you break even or lose a few $1,000s. You will never learn more as an investor of just doing a deal. There are people who read Bigger Pockets for years. There are people who attend these meetings for years, and they always think, someday that'll be me. And son of a gun, man, it was me a year ago. I never thought it would be, but I jumped. So watch that video. If you get 5 minutes, it's incredibly empowering, and it was exactly what I needed 13 months ago to do what I did. And so today I wanted to share that it can be done. I quit my job at 29 years old. I found out a month and a half after that my wife was pregnant, and whoa, man, does that motivate you? Because kids are expensive. Even now, 3 months old, she is damn near a second mortgage. But anyways, I think it was just important for me to talk about it can be done, but it's not a fairy tale world. You don't just quit your job and go, all right, here we go. I mean, I have worked harder over the last year than I have worked probably in the last 3 years combined. And that's because as a full-time real estate investor or a realtor or whatever it is, if you don't work, you don't eat. And that was never the case for me because I had a W-2. My checks were largely guaranteed every other Friday. And so you get fat and happy. Excuse me. And so this last year has taught me that, man, just have to go out and do it. And as corny as it sounds, if this video or this conference helps you to motivate you to quit your job, make sure you have proper finances in place. But or just go do your first deal. That was my goal for today. So I'm not a professional speaker, but I'm just happy I did what I always wanted to do. And if it's on your mind, make a plan and just go for it. Look up what a burn rate is, because you will realize very quickly that you need to know your burn rate in order to quit your job. So once I hit that burn rate with a little bit of extra income, I was gone. And here I am 13 months later, still eating a little too much sometimes.
Awesome. Hey, thanks, Brad. We'll pause here for a second. If anyone has any questions, you can either type them in, or if you want to unmute, go ahead. I will just say that, one of the things that was really impactful for me that you said was, find a partner with strengths different from your own. And, you hear that sometimes, but when you see it working out, it's really a good example of, it always helps to partner up, but find someone that has a different viewpoint, different perspective, and different strengths from you, and then together you can conquer anything. And also, the accountability thing. If you're working all on your own and you don't have the accountability, it's nice to have someone else to help you out that way. So that was impactful to hear. I know, I'm working on my own as well, but I do the accountability just by forming different groups and continuing to network. And I think for those of us that are trying to work on our own and go it on our own, you still need to interact and connect with people. So I thought that was great, Brad. Thank you. Anybody have questions?
I got a more of a broader question too, I guess, to the group. So the one in question too is we've seen a significant ramp up in our drop and swap BOR cases on that part. And I don't know, I mean, there was obviously the case, what happened in February or March with the Palmer kind of case at the Ohio Supreme Court on that part. Have you guys in the larger deals started seeing the more aggressive, quote unquote, ambulance chasing attorneys that kind of keep coming after us on all these other larger deals now for the BOR values?
Hey, Art,
I'll
this is Brian Urbanski.
Brian, please.
I just got a complaint from the BOR. I bought 3 duplexes from a seller in your neck of the woods in California, and I think Gillis, Rich and Gillis, I think is the firm that's representing the school board.
Yep.
And it was I bought 3 duplexes in a package deal, and the purchase price was recorded because all 3 of them were on the same deed at a significant amount of money. And I got the complaint, and what they did was, now this is when you just buy a single parcel, the price is what the price is. When you have multi-parcels, the BOR has no idea what the properties are really worth individually because they didn't see them, they didn't expect them, etc. So what they do, and this kind of pissed me off a little bit, was they simply applied a formula to basically, whatever the sale price was and what the auditor's value was. My value that I paid for them was higher than the older values because they hadn't been sold for probably 10 or 15 years. And when I talked to the attorney, who was actually pretty cool, by the way, he was very reasonable and he answered questions that I had. I'm not a real big fan of attorneys on either side. Mike Gefford, he's not on this call, but he's probably one of the better ones out there as far as real estate attorneys are concerned. But Mark basically said that 2 of the properties I had already sold. So they filed a complaint against me or my company for a board of revision change. And two of the properties I don't even own anymore, but it's for the 2019 year. So to answer your question, yes, they are getting very aggressive, but if you call them up and talk to them, if you just have one parcel, you need to cross your T's and dot your I's. I've been in front of the board of revisions before, and the challenge that you've got is that they're desperate for cash, and they, especially today now where
No.
tax
Yep.
revenues are dropping like a rock, and they are going to get more aggressive. And when I talked to them kind of off the record, I sort of, schmoozed a little bit and was just talking. I can talk shop because I've been in real estate for 17 years, and I've been on both sides of the litigation fence, more so on the plaintiff side, fortunately. But he shared some things with me that it's going to get worse. They're going to be continuing to challenge values as the property values go up. And in my case, it worked out because there are 3 properties, and I'm the only one who knows the true value of those properties because I own them. I've been in there. I've seen them. And what we ultimately ended up doing is, because there are 3 properties, I said, well, the property that I still have that you want to assess was the property that was the worst condition. So he agreed in fact, that property is going to go on the market later this year, probably for about 120. I paid a lot less for it than that. And he agreed to allow me at the BOR hearing to make my case that these other 2 properties were a higher value. The property that I have left is a lot less, and he's going to allow me, because it's a multi-parcel deal, and that's key. He's going to allow me to basically self-assess what the property is, and he's going to make the balance of the assessments on the other 2 properties. What that means, I don't want to get real technical here, but what that means is they want to get $185,000 in tax value, which is about double what these properties were valued at with the Franklin County auditor. And if they're going to go with, if they're going to put the value higher on the other 2 properties, that's fine with me because I don't own them anymore. But the key here is that he's willing to work with me. He spent over an hour on the phone with me, talking about the situation, and I thought that was very generous of his time, and I thought he was being very reasonable. If you have a property that's being reassessed, you've got to have your T's crossed and your I's dotted to keep that property value low. You're going to need photos. It's a really good idea. I'm not saying you should go out and spend $400 on an appraisal, but if you can have anything in writing, even a scope of work of the things that needed to be done, you're going to have an advantage, because even with an attorney, which I went in front of the BOR with an attorney about maybe 3 or 4 years ago, we did not get the reduction, which I wasn't happy about. And I've been in front of them a couple of times. One time I did, one time I did not. So you got to have your T's crossed and your I's dotted, because they are aggressively going after higher values.
Yeah. Well, I think this was more specific on the drop and swap, because that's the one now where we're seeing like the 75 or 80% of the drop and swap entities on that part of it, where historically, I agree with you, same thing, right? Like the other ones are very clearly on that part of it, but historically the drop and swaps hasn't really been an issue on some of that, knowing what the value potentially could be on that part. But it seems like they're becoming much more aggressive on the drop and swap entities now.
Well, I agree with you, and I think that's going to continue, because they got to generate revenue anywhere and everywhere they can. And when they see these unusual transaction values, they're going to come after them, based on what I heard from this one attorney.
All right. Any other questions for Brad? All right. I wanted to summarize real quick. Partially because, as usual, I always make some kind of error in these deals, and this time it was I didn't record the beginning, of course. But we missed the success story, I said. But then Brad, you actually brought up the success story, because you said you met Casey at Coin, and that's a relationship you didn't have before, and so you are still doing business with Fund That Flip. So I'm going to use that as the success story from Coin today. So thanks for that.
And thank you to Brian Fisher for the introduction. Brian obviously always excels at the lovely social gift that he's been given. But his introduction to Casey is, honestly, probably over 10 deals have transpired from that actual meeting. So thanks, Brian. And thanks, Fund That Flip.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's a huge success. I just wanted to repeat that next meeting is June 16th. We're going to have a panel. If you and some of you have emailed, as I said, and we're going to contact you. If other people are interested and want to contribute to our panel, just send me an email and we'll work on that. Also, hopefully at some point we'll be back at the Smokehouse Brewery. And so if you want to help them out, buy a gift card, and that'll be, you can turn that in for dinner and drinks when we get back there. It will not be anytime soon, I don't think, because of the size of our group and the size of that room. You know, so for the foreseeable future, I think we'll be online, but I hope to, you know, as soon as we can to get back there. I think that is all I have, Brad. Thank you very much. That was fantastic. That's exactly what we were looking for. We appreciate it. You have anything else to say before we close off?
Go out and do a deal. Don't wait
advice.
around. Just go do it. That's how you learn.
All
Thank
right.
you, and stay safe.
Thank you. And thank you all for showing up. Send me an email if you have any questions, comments, and thank you, Brad. Thank you both Brads for being on. This is a great meeting, and we'll see you in a month. Thank you all.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Brad.